Hi everybody, so today I want to talk to you about the impact of isolation, because this really will give you a view as to why we thought and felt it was so important to create this care package and to get it out across all of the areas that we work in and further. Now, we know that due to the instructions and guidelines to isolate and stay home, young people will more so use technology for connection and for distraction. Therefore, they could potentially be at risk of social media addiction and the mental health links which isolation has. Isolation, not surprisingly, makes you feel lonelier. In fact, loneliness is common in teens anyway. Studies show that the prevalence of loneliness peaks in adolescents and young adults. Teenage isolation and loneliness also results in a wide range of unhealthy physical and psychological symptoms. In addition, social isolation in teens can be a starting point to depression. Moreover, teenage isolation has played a significant role in developing avoidant personality disorder. The effects of isolation on mental health are overwhelmingly negative. Furthermore, ongoing loneliness and isolation can also create physical symptoms. Therefore, research shows that chronic loneliness has the following effects: an increased stress response and cortisol levels, less restful or restorative sleep, a negative impact on physical health more detrimental for overall health than obesity, smoking or high blood pressure, a greater risk of suicide, more alcohol or drug use, depression, anxiety, poor self-care such as hygiene, bathing, grooming, nutrition, and just an overall decrease in positive outlook. We talk a lot at Love for Life about the power of connection. All the work that we do is face to face with our young people because it's relational. It's about energy, body language, connecting with that person. Connecting with others creates a host of positive benefits, which is why we do it. These include higher functioning immune system, better self-esteem, lower rates of anxiety and depression, a happier, more optimistic outlook, longer life expectancy, stronger emotional regulation skills, an improved cognitive function, and more empathy and feelings of trust towards others. Mentioned earlier about the effects of social media during lockdown. The proliferation of social media contributes to the young people's withdrawal and isolation. And that's because our young people think that they can substitute real life connections with virtual ones. Now, during the pandemic, there is little else that we can be doing. However, we must be mindful of the time we spend on social media and whether the content which they are viewing is having a positive effect on their state of mind. The frequency of a young person's use of social media has a clear correlation to how they feel. A recent study found that participants who checked Facebook and other social networking sites between 50 and 100 times a day were 37% more distressed than those who checked it just a few times a day. Those who checked more than 100 times a day were 47% more distressed on average. Frequent use of smartphones and social media actually rewires the developing young person's brain to constantly seek out immediate gratification. Consequently, it can lead to other addictive behaviours. In fact, studies have also shown that internet and mobile phone addiction have similar effects on the brain as heroin or other drugs. According to a review study published in the journal Cyberpsychology, Behavior and Social Networking, a sudden end of online social networking may, in some frequent users, cause signs and symptoms that resemble symptoms of drug or alcohol withdrawal. So if we really think about this, for any of our young people who are returning to school or college settings, From checking their social networking 100 times a day to then being back into this routine and this environment, it's a very sudden and very sharp stopping of use of that. If somebody was an alcoholic, no practitioner would ever recommend that person just stop, because of the effects physically and mentally on that person. Some young people have chosen social withdrawal, which is a form of avoidant behaviour, and they've chosen that because it's a coping strategy. Now, avoidance behaviours or avoidance coping refer to ways of behaving that are motivated by the desire to avoid certain thoughts or feelings. Now, although some of our young people may not have shown this before, it is likely that due to the pandemic and due to the long period of isolation and social distancing, they may now prefer to be isolated, and this will create that avoidance behaviour. We must therefore look at avoidance behaviour, which might include avoiding places or situations such as going back to school or any sort of social distancing events that create discomfort or even panic. Some young people may avoid unwanted situations or feelings in several ways, so we've got to be hot on this. First, they may show avoidant behaviour by refusing to do something. They might avoid a difficult conversation or other social situations. Furthermore, they might try to avoid leaving home as much as possible. As a result of this, they isolate themselves from their peers and the rest of the world. Again, due to the pandemic, some young people who are emotionally affected by this might be using the guideline as an excuse to mask any underlying emotional struggles or avoidant behaviours developing. And we must try to identify early on which of these causes is more likely. A lot of people, since we've launched the care package, have asked whether isolation can lead to symptoms of depression, and the answer is yes. Isolation in young people can increase the risk of depression. Under normal circumstances, when a young person withdraws from social interactions, it's one of the top risk factors of depression. So I want to go through 10 signs of depression to really watch out for. The first one is, as we've discussed, avoidance of social situations and a lot of interest in favoured activities as the lockdown rules lessen. Exhaustion, constant tiredness and fatigue, and just a general lack of energy. A sense of despair, sadness and hopelessness, sometimes escalating into suicidal thoughts or ideation. Lack of motivation, feelings of guilt or failure. Unexplained aches and pains, stomach pains, headaches that are constant with no explanation. A hard time concentrating, particularly for young people who are normally quite focused. Feeling worthless, irritable, frustrated, or having an extreme case of low self-esteem. Disturbed sleep patterns, so being up until 4 o'clock in the morning but taking regular naps through the day. Changes to their appetite, which could be not eating at all to binge eating on a regular basis. And lastly, abusing alcohol or drugs to cope with the pain as a form of self-medication. If a young person demonstrates one or more of the above behaviours, the next steps are to visit a doctor immediately. It's been said in the news and in the media that people who are showing symptoms of unrelated medical issues, unrelated to the coronavirus, are not seeking medical help. And I feel that the mental health side of this is going to seriously be affected because of that, because of not reaching out to your support systems, networks, healthcare. If any of these signs or symptoms are noticed, you must get a doctor's appointment either via the telephone or at the surgery, because a mental health evaluation or assessment is going to be required. While some of these symptoms can be short-term and potentially a result of lockdown, it's vital to know as soon as possible whether a young person is suffering from depression or avoidance behaviour. Therefore, the root causes can be addressed immediately. Even if you're not entirely sure, I urge you to seek that advice and support from a professional. So thank you for listening. I hope that's been of some help and use to you. If you do have any questions or wish to go into further detail with this, or you have any concerns about a young person, please contact me as soon as possible. Thank you very much.